Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever this message reaches you. I have the pleasure of speaking to Dan. Dan, can you pronounce your last name?
Aguilera, like Christina.
Ag- okay. Well, hopefully you guys are not siblings, but that's be all
I
right.
tell people she's my cousin, and a lot of people believe me, so we could just roll with it.
We'll roll with your cousin. I'm having the pleasure of actually speaking with him. He has wrote the ebook, The Entrepreneur Dating Strategy: 5 Key Steps to Master Dating and Finding the Right Match. The Where you could find him is on empowercoaching.com. I've had the pleasure of speaking with him for a bit and why he got into coaching. It was a little bit about how he grew up, why he actually got into this field, and the niche that he felt like he needed to help out other individuals that were struggling. How you doing today, Dan?
I'm doing great. Well, thank you for having me on. How are you?
Doing very well. So you're over in Florida right now. You got some interesting weather patterns.
It's always interesting here. It could be sunny 1 hour, like a hurricane the next hour, but I just had to get used to that.
So, what we're actually going to do today is a little bit differently. So, what got you into writing this ebook for people?
Well, as far as launching my entire company and helping men who are struggling in their dating, that's something very personal to me. And I guess I might as well just go into my backstory with this. Growing up, I didn't have my parents divorced when I was pretty young. I grew up in New Jersey, I should say. I spent the first 25 years of my life there. My parents divorced when I was pretty young, so I wasn't really close with my dad, and there were no male figures in my immediate family. So I grew up surrounded by women all the time. So I was not taught the things that young boys should be taught about being a man, about masculinity, about taking charge of your life and taking the lead with things. So I really didn't realize its negative effect on me until like my 20s, I would say. But even before that, growing up in my teens and my high school years and my college years, I always sensed that something was off about me. I just didn't fit in with other guys. I was very shy and introverted. I had really no confidence in myself. Talking to women, forget about it. I really was terrified of it. I was terrified of rejection. And I was jealous of guys who seemingly had were going out with all these beautiful girls. And I knew I could never get the girl of my dreams. So as I got into my college years, I forced myself to come out of my comfort zone a little bit. I just became more social. I joined a fraternity. I think it was in my second year, my sophomore year of college. And we started doing a lot of social events, having parties. And in that group, it was my first time really bonding with that amount of men, like group of men. Again, I didn't have any brothers or really close male friends growing up. So while we had a lot of fun times, one thing that always ate away at me was I saw these guys, I hate to use the term hooking up, but that's how they referred to it at the time. So these guys hooking up with all these really gorgeous women just effortlessly. And whenever I tried to talk to a woman, I always seemed to repel her, but I didn't know why. I didn't know what it was about me. So I was caught in this loop of, well, I must not be an attractive guy, or I must not just not be what women want. And it took a toll on my mental health, and it spiraled me into depression. I didn't really realize it at the time, but I started turning to alcohol to drown out my problems when I felt alone. And then I got into drugs a little bit later on in my college years, like on a partying level. There were times I found myself really intoxicated and in some dangerous, vulnerable situations and embarrassing situations. And it started to control my life. And it took until after graduation, into my mid 20s, when I really started to go out and date some more. I started joining dating apps, and I was getting dates with women, that I started to overcome those insecurities a little bit. But where I realized I was still struggling was I had what's now called the nice guy syndrome, where I was very approval seeking. I really was just going out trying to be a chameleon, to be whatever I felt these women wanted me to be, in order for them to go on dates with me, to sleep with me, to just stay with me. And whenever somebody broke up with me, I would take, even if we had just been on one or two dates, I was so emotionally invested in them that I would just take it as a tremendous loss, and I would sleep back into that depression. So I was letting just these women, and their just however their emotions were feeling at the time, or whatever their perceptions of me from brief encounters, I was letting that dictate how I felt about myself. And it really was just hell for me. I really was just in that depression. So this was like again, now going into my late 20s, that's when I started reading dating advice, some books and some podcasts, and following content online. and I really liked it. I started learning about all the alpha male stuff, like the about being confident in who you are, and it really has changed my life. However, in that journey, I also came across a lot of negative content, negative against women. That is what is referred to as red pill now, about how women are hypergamous. They want guys with money. You got to be this 6 foot guy with a six-figure bank account and a Ferrari in order to attract women, and just saying all these nefarious things about women purely to take the responsibility off of themselves and to not accept their shortcomings. So while I did believe it for a little while, and I thought like, wow, this is an awakening. Really, I'm not the problem. By further studying it, I realized that no, it's just work that I have to do on myself. These guys have to shift their mindset. I have to shift my mindset and look at it as simply we're flawed human beings. We have our problems, but rather than cover it up and try to amplify ourselves to be something we're not, embrace our flaws, embrace vulnerability, and just move forward with confidence. And it really does help you show up better in the world. So that's when right around the time I decided, I want to start my own business. I figured this is what I'm most passionate about. I think God put me through all this turmoil, this inner turmoil in order for me to make a difference in other men's lives. So that's what really led me into launching my company and sharing my tips and my advice and just guiding guys through their the challenging dating process. And if they're having similar feelings like I was having at that time.
Yeah, it's definitely tough to be raised without a father. Women do a great job at what they can do, even though most elementary school teachers, they're females. Most nurses, people like motherly, maternal figures are usually the ones that are coming across. The paternal figures sometimes get lost, especially if you're not playing sports. And I was listening to this podcast. I'm trying to remember the woman that was on it, but it was explaining about how beneficial it is for a man to be in a child's life, even from the ages from 0 to 2, all the way up into the teens. And the father, or it not even actually has to be the bio dad, but the one that is able to show them how to embrace failure, how to be fearless, how to be able to exert confidence. And the maternal figure, even though that they can tap into it a little bit, but they're not able to fully give that experience, it makes it a lot harder for a person to be able to get out of their shell.
Yeah.
Uh, so you were raised with you by your mother. Were you also like, were your grandmother? What was the type of like situation that you grew up in?
Yeah, my family structure, it was kind of unique. So I have one older sister. She's 10 years older than me. So, by the time I was 4 or 5 years old, she was already in high school. So she wasn't around very much. My mother, yeah, she was a single parent. She worked a lot. Really, I was pretty as far as like caretaking in my early years, I was raised by my grandmother, who was my mom's mom. So she like kind of essentially babysat me most of the time. And then when I started going to school, she would drive me to school, pick me up a lot. She would cook dinner for our family because my mom was just working a lot. She didn't have time to do all those like home domestic chores. So all those stuff like cooking, cleaning, housework, that was done by my grandmother. Really, my mother had to be there, and she really struggled a lot. Like raising two children. My dad, they were separated at the time. They were separated for a long time before they officially got divorced. And even when my dad was still living in the house, he wasn't bringing home a paycheck. He had a hard time holding down a job. So my mom had to step into the role of the masculine, and I realized why she was so stressed out all the time, why she was angry and resentful towards my father for many years. Because now understanding women's psychology, they don't want to be put into that masculine energy. They don't want to have to make the decisions that run the household. But I mean, putting all that aside, I have to say I did grow up. There was a lot of love in my home. There was surrounded by feminine energy. There was a lot of drama, a lot of crying and things like that I was exposed to, and it did weird me out a bit because I didn't like all the crying and all the emotion. I think some of it rubbed off on me as well, so I had a hard time expressing my masculinity as I grew older. Um, so that was, I think that's the effect it had on me psychologically. But regardless, I did grow up in a very loving home, and I'm really grateful for everyone who was part of my upbringing. They really made me the man I am today.
Like one of the areas that I've actually talked to quite a few different guys, and even where I developed in, is that crying was not okay for us. And but what is also not really always taught is why are you crying? You're having this exertion of emotion, so you're having this physical response to it, but you're not able to fully identify the emotion. You're also the frustration, typically that's what happens with kids, and not knowing how to communicate what is going on in their head. So it creates this barrier, and like most men and most boys too, they like to be shown what to do. They like to emulate the role models around them. And if we get into the like more of a toxic or a perverted sense of what masculinity is chasing women. It's chasing ideologies. It's actually forcing our beliefs on other people, and it creates this barrier of being able to connect to a person fully. Because by sleeping with a person, it's actually kind of it changes the narrative, and it has this physical attachment. But as a guy, like having our father be able to show us, hey, this is what healthy male boundaries of bonds look like. Hey, this is the people that you need to rely on. But so I could definitely be a barrier to overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I started to, I guess, sort of look at my dad as a male role model, like as I was getting older, even after my parents' divorce. And when I got into sort of my late teens, early 20s, I started hanging out with him more. And as much as I still love my dad, me and him still have a great relationship, even though we live in separate states now. He was far from a role model, even though he was a nice man. He drank too much, he gambled a lot. He had a history. I mean, I found out years later that he cheated on my mom, was met, multiple times. So yeah, him and his friends I would hang out and have drinks with and stuff, and they would just boast about how many women they've slept with in their life and how that makes them so cool and high value. Now, compounded with that, I also experienced the same thing with in my fraternity in my college years. As much as I loved those guys, they all when we had our weekly meetings and we kind of had our decompress moment at the end of our meetings where we talk about our week. Everything was about if they got laid that week, how much, and then we'd all give them a standing ovation. It was like they were winning an award. They viewed women and dating and having sex and everything as competition. And I didn't, now in retrospect, that's incredible for me. I think that's an incredibly toxic mindset to have. Like, talk about toxic masculinity. And as far as my coaching goes, that's how I define toxic masculinity. That's a really unhealthy way for men to support each other, to tell them, to imply to them that their worth is based on how many women they can sleep with, how many women they can seduce, because you're stripping away who they are as a person and just telling them they have to conform to what women expect of them, conform to what society expects of them. So you're taking away their individuality. That's how I see it. And I think it's a process that it's something that a lot of men stay silent about. They're afraid to talk about because they're looked at as wimps. If they say, no, no, I haven't dated in a while, or I just feel insecure, they're mocked often. I know I was mocked in my early years if I didn't have a girlfriend, or if I was made out to feel like something was wrong with me, and I internalized that. So that's really the message that I really want to help guys overcome and realize it's total nonsense, that they really got to embrace who they are.
Oh, I agree about bracing who they are. And when I think about people that are chasing women or they are gambling or they're drinking, there's this area that they're trying to overcompensate for, or they're trying to downplay in their life that is actually causing them to have this huge barrier. When I served in the Marine Corps, a lot of us, what we did was actually we were looking to go get laid. We thought we were at the highest level. I was part of the one of the largest fraternities in the world. It was an interesting time, and even though I was part of that negative system, I didn't know why I was part of the negative system. Nobody actually really understood or taught me how to. And we took these characteristics that were trying to hide or trying to control our emotions, and then we just got stuck there. We tried to keep capitalizing on something that was the more instant gratification, the dopamine hits, because chasing women when you were in the 20s or teens, and it, it dismisses exactly who they are. And at this time, it's I kind of think I wish I spent more time developing healthier relationships with my friends and with my family, and even with myself. When you were talking about coaching, how does your coach and influence heavily on the individual self about actually making sure that they have a healthy relationship before welcoming other people into their life?
Yeah, it's really just making their needs a priority as far as social needs, just as far as emotional needs. So what I see a lot is guys who, like you just said, they dedicate so much time to chasing women. They're constantly swiping on the apps. They're going to bars every weekend. They're just going out with the mentality of I just got to meet a gorgeous woman. And if I don't meet, and they subconsciously think if I don't meet a woman that I'm interested in, or if I talk to a woman and I don't get her number, it was a total waste of time. I'm going to go home alone and I'm just so pissed off. It was a total waste of time. So what I encourage you guys to do is to just it may involve taking up new hobbies. It may involve some lifestyle changes, joining new groups, but it's really just making your desires a priority, going out into the world to meet new people, to try to find common grounds and like kindred spirits with other people, men and women. And through that process, you will start to meet more quality women, women that you're looking for. And this is where self-awareness comes in. I talk about that with guys usually in the first session. What exactly are you looking for? Let's make a list of what your must-haves are, what your deal breakers are, so you have more clarity. Because the way a lot of guys go about it is they just want to go for any woman who's mildly attractive because they're just internally desperate and they have the scarcity mindset, and it's living up to this societal norm that they feel they have to live up to up. I hate this term body count, but I'll use it, like, to up their body count, because when you're hanging out with the fellas, everybody likes to talk about their body count, like that really matters as far as you living your life. So that's really what I help guys do. I just say, well, where do you feel you're emotionally lacking? And how do you feel that a woman can change that? And in reality, a woman can't change that. She can only add to your life. She can't complete your life. So by dissecting that, we make a plan of how a person can get out there more and just give their gift to the world more, find a higher purpose.
So you mentioned a physical attraction several times so far. Why do you believe that men go for just the physical?
I think it's just the way we're wired. It's just we're just very visually stimulated. Where it's I think the sexes are opposite. Like, men care a little more about the physical looks than the personality, or at least they're willing to look past negative personality traits in the beginning, whereas women tend to be the other way around. A guy doesn't have to be match what she desires physically as much if he can connect with her on an emotional level. With men, I mean, I don't have like a real good biological explanation for it, but I just know that that's the way men's brains are wired. And as a result, that's why men tend to compromise on their boundaries and not set boundaries and put up with a lot of things they shouldn't put up with, and why they ignore red flags in the beginning. And that's how they end up getting burned by certain women, cheating, stealing, lying, manipulating, getting into these toxic situations. And I'll talk with guys sometimes and they give me a whole timeline of all these things that happen. And I'm just like, bro, you just pointed out like 5 or 6 red flags in that whole time you were dating. Like, you didn't see this coming. You didn't see that she was going to be cheating on you with this guy at work. Like, and so that, again, that's where emotional intelligence comes in. So I help guys with that, and just really just internalizing what they're looking for down the road, not to get too swelled up into a woman's beauty, not to get too emotionally invested from the start.
The reason I was asking that is when Richard Dawkins wrote this book back in like the 1950s. It's called The Selfish Gene, and it's talking about passing our genes passed on as a very subconscious level, and how we have the need for the immortality to keep breeding. And back in the 50s compared to now in the 20s, 2025, it's a very different way of connecting to people. Women have actually taken more of the masculine role because they are more worried about their careers than they used to be. It's also been the letdown of how guys have been in their life, and they're not actually always feeling so comfortable. At least that's my belief system that's based off of it. How unfortunately we have actually failed a lot of women and not actually showing up for them. The reason I was asking you about the physical, because there's like several scientific journals and books I've read on it, and because I used to be very pretty much wrapped up only in a person's physical, and the thing that they call this term is called a sapiosexual, being attracted to a person's mind and or intelligence, I should say. And the the thing I am curious about, do you help individuals look at about how they are nowadays about looking to fully connect this because you said pick up other hobbies and getting past just the physical so that they can have longer term relationships because the first and second revolution of the feminist movement have actually really changed the impact of the way that men communicate and also how women communicate and receive information.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as the hobbies goes, I think that a big part of why I recommend that is because it opens the doors to bond with somebody over shared interests and common beliefs. Don't get me wrong. I believe that a guy should date a woman he's attracted to. I'm not just saying that he has to make a huge compromise. Like, of course, he has to be attracted to her. But when you go out a lot of times, like especially if you go to bars and nightclubs a lot, like I used to do, sure, you're going to meet a lot of hot women there, but they're often going to be somebody that you have a hard time connecting with. They're often women that they'll let you buy her a drink and they'll let you compliment her a lot, but that doesn't mean that she's interested in you. And the guys mistake that for interest, and that especially with entrepreneurs, high performing intelligent men, they tend to view things, especially dating, they view it very transactionally. They think, well, if I just do nice things for her, if I buy her a drink and if I compliment her to death and just do all these nice things, I can buy her attraction. That's really the psychology behind their approach. So really telling them that, having them embrace a different lifestyle, to do things they truly like and look for signs of interest in a woman before making all these investments, before just buying her these things purely to win her approval. Just look for, like, talk to her, look for signs of interest and see how well she's reciprocating. And if that's the level of reciprocation that you're looking for. And if it's not, you just have to question, is she really that interested in me? Is she somebody that I'd want to spend a lot of time with? And they have a hard time deciding that for themselves. So that's what I coach them through. So we decide, okay, well, this woman could be an option, but why don't we just look into different areas where you can meet different women? So yeah, definitely getting past that superficial beauty. It's a hard thing to do. Again, us men are visually wired, but again, with the help of someone like me or somebody who has your best interests in mind, it's something that's totally doable, and it's really miraculous once you achieve it.
It's the one of the areas I feel like we get stifled in again, where it's how are we emotionally equipped and how are we actually able to see what we want and to be able to find, like you said, the red pill, because that's typically where there's this book I read when I came here. I moved over to Billings, Montana in 21. It was called No More Mr. Nice Guy.
I know the
And
book well. Yeah.
I read the book and I'm like, he has some good parts and he also has some not parts I agree with. And it's easy to be like, these women are they're mean or they just want these things. And it's like I think about how there's a short story, it's called Araby, and you probably have read it while you were in high school, and most people have. And the very end of the book, and this is when I think when we start buying things for people. The end of the short story was there was this woman talking to the soldier, and the soldier was hearing what he wanted to hear, what she was saying, and she was saying something very different than what the soldier wanted to hear. And it's really the miscommunication. And the whole story about the boy is that he was on a bus and he took a train over to an Araby, which is like a bazaar or a festival. And he wanted to win this woman's approval. So he went to the Araby, he got all like hyped up. And at the end of it, he realized that she didn't want him. She didn't even want anything from the Araby. He wanted her desires. He wanted her to be able to please her. And this is a young boy and buy her something to hopefully win her affection. But how often do you focus in on learning how to communicate more effectively to be able to hear what the other person is trying to convey?
Yeah, that's something that you should be listening for in every interaction. And that's an interesting story. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, so as far as I've never experienced for somebody tell me that, like, personally, as far as, she said one thing or I heard it. I've never witnessed that. But when it comes when it comes to emotional intelligence, decoding how women speak is a big one. When I started to learn how women respond with certain, like, I guess the only term I could use is euphemistically. They tend to reject men very euphemistically. Very rarely does a woman come right out and say, sorry, I'm really not interested, or, I don't know when I'm available. She tends to give very vague responses like, oh, I'll check my schedule and get back to you, something along those lines. So men, I think the problem we have as men is we tend to take things very literally. So is it, as weird as it sounds, like when you're communicating with a woman, you can't take everything she says so literally, especially when it comes to making plans, escalating things, going on with the dating process. So I'll have to ask guys like, what did she text you back when you asked her on a date? How long has it been? Because I guess us guys, out of our desperation, because we want that outcome of this particular woman and we want to date her and sleep with her, we just look for any loophole of hope. So we sort of twist the words, we twist it to fit our narrative, or the narrative that we want to unfold. So, I mean, it really depends on the situation, but it's taken me a few years to understand like women's communication styles. It's something that you really have to kind of go example to, like, specific examples to analyze. But it's just, my coaching is very question based. So it's like, how did you interpret what she said? All right. Well, what are her actions reflecting? It's really like analyzing what her actions are versus what she's saying, because especially now as I'm getting older, I pay much more attention to what people do rather than what they say, because as human beings we tend to, we don't want to hurt people's feelings, we want to smooth things over, we don't want to cause confrontation. So it's not like we're just lying to be manipulative, it's just we're trying to keep things calm. So kind of decoding how women speak and how women communicate is a big part in enhancing your dating life.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right when you were saying that we look for any loophole to be able to find hope. And I fully agree with that. I remember going when I went through a divorce and after another long-term relationship when it was over, I was looking for validation, outside validation, because the person at the one time I really loved, and they rejected me heavily. And I will say that they were rejecting the person that I was because they first saw the potential, and I wasn't living up to the potential that they saw. And it was a slowly erosion of actually not being that individual, that high level character of who can be able to sweep them off their feet, can be able to dance with them, make them laugh, joke, to doing something silly. And I wonder about, like, after we get that heartbroken, we kind of go more to the instant gratification. Again, we go towards alcohol, we go towards sex, gambling, drugs. But what it sounds like with your coaching, you're kind of trying to how would I say, not disconnect them, but to create a little bit of a barrier, a little bit of a space and time to help them delay their gratification, be able to help them see and not be hyper fixated, but they actually, it's like to disrupt the hyper fixation. That's the word I was looking for, to be able to help them connect the individuals. I think that's a really cool skill that you have to be able to say, hey, this is what I'm seeing when you're writing this. Why are you seeing this here? And helping them break it down to be able to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really like, it's as far as like just changing their life. Also, it's, granted, guys fall into addictions like alcohol and drugs and pornography and whatnot. As far as picking up new things in life, now, part of the reason is because, yes, it makes you a more interesting person. It broadens your horizons. It just makes it raises your chances of attracting someone genuine because you have this exciting lifestyle. But at the same time, it's a healthy distraction from those other vices. It's a healthy distraction that, instead of just sitting home and getting drunk on my couch, I can actually go out to this meetup event, or I can go to this church Bible study group. I could take a Pilates class, a yoga class. I mean, these are all things I've done in my personal life recently, which if you asked me a couple of years ago, I'd be like, oh, I don't know if I really be into that. That's just kind of weird. It's just wasn't what I really did. I just worked and partied all the time. And since embracing a healthier lifestyle, I've noticed just magnificent change, and it's affected how I show up in the world, how I show up in social situations. It's raised respect for myself, and therefore others' respect for me. So I'm just feeling it in all senses. So that's like my big approach.
And I think that's a huge approach. And At first, I would say it's a distraction, but then at the other thing, if you really lean into it, you're able to now start to develop other areas. And not only just will you become more interesting, you're also looking at things from more different paradigms. Ryan Leake wrote this amazing book. It's called Chasing Failure. And it's something that I really heavily believe in, where you start to embrace failure so you can be able to grow. And when you're around individuals, and if you're, instead of just being like one way, you're a multi-faceted individual, or you're looking at things from a poly perspective, you are now able to not only just think about it so literally, you be able to joke, be able to have fun, and be able to explore different parts, because most people are not just one being. They're multiple layers. Like you said, that you were raised mostly by your mother and your grandmother. And then you had this other distortion of individuals that were in your life. And now you are recorrecting that narrative, but you'll still always have that distortion in your view, but it doesn't mean that you need to go back there. But now developing these areas, you're able to be, you could be more attractive to other people, where, wow, you're a pretty cool person. I'd like to actually spend some time with you. I'm gonna go grab a cup of coffee. And not even just like meeting women, but you're also meeting other people that you want to bring into your circle and developing you as a human.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a getting healthy. I mean, healthy role models for one thing. Surrounding yourself with people who are gonna support you in your journey and uplift you when you're feeling down. And doesn't mean that you're just gonna use them to vent your problems about, but somebody who isn't gonna judge you for your flaws, somebody who isn't gonna just say tough it up, be a man, stop crying, like we were talking about before. Uh, so just finding by embracing who your flaws and living who you truly are, you attract the right type of you repel the wrong people, which is a good thing, and of course you attract the right people. Again, friends, comrades, and of course women. So that's why it's really comes from. That's why I really am very anti all the pickup artist stuff online, the advice, because look, I'm not saying it can't work, but it's band-aid solutions at best, and it gives men these false sense of, well, if you just say this line, with this tone and with this look, you'll trick a woman into sleeping with you because you're not okay just as you are. So that's really what it teaches, even though it doesn't say that. But it's really destructing the person's individuality and what makes them unique, and saying you got to be like these other 10% alpha males out there. That's the only way you're ever going to attract women, because you're a flawed human being. You're wimpy and needy and all these negative ideologies. And what does that do to men? Does it build them up? No, it pulls them down. It makes them feel worse about themselves. It raises their anxiety. It raises their sense of insecurity than who they are. So that's why I said to myself when I started this, I got to take the whole 180 approach. I can't just go with these silly pieces of advice that, again, work sometimes, but they don't change a man's life for the long run.
Because the area that you just talked about, I call it is the rejection of oneself. Because if you need to be this facade, you're saying that you're not good enough. And then all of a sudden, it's going to be pretty much like a house built on straw. It's nothing. It's just going to fall apart. Like the tone, or this is what you need to say. Yeah, if you can make yourself be interesting. But if you don't feel like you're interesting, that's kind of a you problem at this point. And it's more of, why don't we just call a timeout to be able to work on ourselves, to be able to be that person that is desirable? Going back to what you said about building the individual, building the individual up to be able to make them more attractive, or more like, and you even said to repel the people that you don't like or won't like you. That's the truth. When you start to change, individuals in your life will start to walk out, because you're not as predictable to them. You don't have the same type of work ethic. You don't have the same type of hobbies anymore, or the interests. And it's a nice way to be able to find individuals that are like-minded. So bef- I love where we're going with this. So what was some of your personal like epiphanies when you started to say collapse, or mentally collapse, and be able to say, hey, I'm not going to be a frat boy, or I'm not going to be like my father?
Yeah, I guess it was just sort of, I realized that I wasn't getting anywhere with my current approach. I just, because what I viewed, what it came down to, and I don't think I mentioned this before, growing up, I used to get a little bit teased, I guess, by my family in a loving way about, how come you don't have a girlfriend? When are you going to find a girlfriend? When are you going to settle down? Even now, like I'm pushing 30, my mom still kind of pokes fun because she wants a grandbaby. Like, when are you going to get married? When am I going to hear wedding bells? And I'm able to brush it off now and laugh it off because, I'm living my life the way I want to. But when I was much younger, I took it all very personally. Like, something is wrong with me that I just can't get a girlfriend. I can't get a woman interested in me. So what I was doing all those years was really not just chasing women for the sake of chasing women. It was really just sort of to fulfill what I thought was expected of me. That I thought by a certain age I had to be married or have a long-term girlfriend. I had to be married and have a baby by a certain age. Because I grew up in a somewhat of an old-fashioned home with old-fashioned values, and they just taught us that from a young age. My sister was always dating really young. Like, she got engaged pretty young. And, me, we'd go to family functions and I never had, a plus one. I was just always alone. And people, they were like whispers that something's odd, that Daniel never brings a girlfriend with him. So I think when I started really following the healthy dating advice and started doing work on myself, making my health a priority, giving up certain uh, toxic habits, going to the gym more, developing an active lifestyle, eating healthier, I really, I think I'll just go deep into this, and this is slightly dark, but all those years that I was drinking heavily and I, was smoking for some time and doing drugs, even though I never said it out loud, what I really felt was it was a slow suicide for me. I felt like, there's this pain and agony that I'm in that I don't want to live with forever. And I could never really take my own life because that would just devastate my family. But at the same time, I think if I just take up these habits, and one, it makes me look like a bad boy, it makes me look risky. And on top of that, it shortens my lifespan. So when I really started to follow the healthy dating advice, I realized, like, no, this isn't the type of archetype I have to live up to. I don't want to die young. I want to live healthy. I want to live a long time. I want to be healthy. So that I think that was the big epiphany for me, realizing that working on myself and my happiness in life was more important than just having a woman, and it certainly wasn't dependent on having a woman. So that's that. I would say that was my epiphany. That was my waking up moment, and my stress and anxiety has been drastically declined since that time. It's declined in the good way. It's gone down. I don't care. I don't look too much to the future as far as like fearing it or fearing what will happen. I embrace failure, like you said before. I embrace ambiguity, not knowing how things are going to work out. And I essentially trust the universe. I become very spiritual in that regard. I just do my best, and I just trust that things are going to work out one way or another, even if it's not exactly as I hope. It'll work out in my favor, and any obstacles I come across, I'm going to get across them, and it's going to make me a stronger man because of it. So that's really how I got to where I am today.
Yeah, it's if I remember correctly, you're Italian, right?
Yeah, I'm half Italian, half Cuban, but yeah,
Yeah, the Italian sides, growing up in Long Island, New York, you guys are typically more Italian Catholics and have a very strong thing of having babies and grandbabies and teaching them how to cook and
yeah,
more of it's a closer network of people. And sometimes we don't realize how much extra pressure it is on us.
yeah,
And to be looked at like, hey, why is Daniel screwed up? Where is his girlfriend? What's going on? And at the time that you were growing up, they might even say like, is he gay right now? And
yeah,
it's and it's like, no, you guys just don't understand, and you guys don't allow me to be able to converse with you because you're telling me I'm something's wrong with me, but you're not over here helping me build a bridge to be able to become this person. Like obviously you see me struggling, so why not help? Like I think about that, and this is hence why I started up this podcast, is just to help out other people realize that they're not alone in their own suffering. Because if we don't help people build bridges, what we're going to do is they're going to shame them, hopefully into compliance. And by this time, they're going to try to use every single shortcut possible and create this pretty much crappy life. And it's going to mess them up. That's why when I think about delaying the instant gratification and how huge that is, and dating, like dating to marry is probably one of the most, in my perspective, is one of the areas that you have to invest the most amount of time, emotion, and resources, not just fiscally, but real resources. Because to really want to marry somebody, to death do we part. Are they going to help you out with the simple things? Are they going to accept you when you're falling apart? Are you guys going to build up that emotional currency? Are you going to really meet each other with love? Because sex fades. It fades in a lot of relationships, especially when you get older. And then you're going to wake up and you're going to look at this person in the eyes and be like, do I really want to be in this relationship? And God forbid your dick doesn't work anymore and you got to use a blue pill. And if you base your whole sexual identity or your identity based off of your penis, you're going to fail and you're going to have another crisis later down the road. So I think actually helping people learn how to connect is a huge part in the community of building bridges.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's like, yeah, I didn't have that outlet growing up. A lot of guys who aren't raised with that, strong masculine figure, they really just don't have anyone to talk to. I even grew up in a time where therapy wasn't really talked about. It's like, getting like mental health. There was no mental health awareness month when I was growing up or anything like that. And, again, men were seen as weak if they had to ask for help. And you mentioned the school system before, dominated by women. I went to, and you said Italian Catholic. I am Catholic, so I went to a Catholic school. So yeah, all female teachers up until I got to like seventh grade. I had all female teachers, and they doted on the girls. The girls were always, anytime there was a fight or something, the girls were always given the benefit of the doubt. The boys were always yelled at and punished. So they just, it seemed like they had this inherent distrust and dislike for the boys. So I think that's another thing where it's like it creates that form of what's now called toxic masculinity in the grand scheme of things in the manosphere, about how just men are overly aggressive, they're disrespectful to women, they don't require to their needs, and things like that. Like, men are here to serve women, like that type of ideology that created a negative connotation around the concept of masculinity. So yeah, again, if I had had a healthier masculine influence growing up, I could have surpassed all that. So that's why, I say to couples getting divorced, it's good if you have a young son, keep the father in his life as much as possible, or have some type of male mentor. I think that's a good thing to like influence the boy with, just to, because he does have emotions and he may have a hard time expressing them. So
Yeah, it's before we jump out of this and we start getting into more into your area of expertise, the when they're talking about kids and raising kids, even if you have a boy or a girl, dads need to be in the figure. It has to be in their life. The they're right. Men are typically more aggressive, while men are more fixers. They want to fix the problem. And young ages, we are taught to go to school. We're taught to answer the question. We are taught to be obedient. We are taught to be very quickly. We do not look at how boys are raised. Boys are meant to be more outdoors. They're meant to be moving around. That's why boys are, especially nowadays, are being heavily diagnosed with ADHD. There is a lot of our food, our diets, and you're right. Or girls do get the benefit of the doubt. Girls are really conditioned from a young age to be pleasers, to be able to have higher academic grades, to help out. And when it comes to boys, boys want to fix things. And we are not really conditioning kids or boys, men, to be able to discuss or be able to articulate. And there's a breakdown in communication with people. And to me, I think I understand why the red pill works for certain people, why the fourth revolution of feminism is working, why that they're saying that they want to have women only Uber drivers for women. And I totally understand. I totally respect it because the we get into these echo chambers and we don't really understand each other. We're not really communicating well. We're not actually being able to understand each other. And this is going back to the school system of having kids be able to express their emotions. Like divorce rates are going up higher. the substances are get higher in families between alcohol and marijuana, since marijuana has become a lot more legal. The aspect of, hey, I'm too freaking busy for you. Here's a tablet. Go play your games. Go self-soothe this way, looking for an outlet instead of actually learning how to self-soothe internally. And we became so instant gratificated that a lot of our system is jacked up. So getting into the field that you're getting into, and what actually you've been into, I don't say getting into, but you're doing, is you have a lot of work where you have this area of a young boy that is trying to be instant gratificated of, hey, I'm gonna go get drunk, I'm gonna increase my dopamine hits. I might actually party depending on how it is with MDMA, or actually doing other things. I want to have sex so that I actually have another dopamine release. I have something else to brag about to my buddies. But then what we don't talk about is that crash. We don't talk about that crash at the end where our lives are actually feeling like shit. We're not knowing how to self-soothe. And that's why I said before what I believe when we're actually looking for a relationship to date. I believe that before you get married, you should go to couples counseling. I believe that before you move in with somebody, you should learn how to use these skill sets instead of saying, "Oh, I don't have enough money for it." Well, this is something that you're investing heavily into. If you really want to love somebody and you want to be the best version of yourself, one, and two, this person is going to be a huge toll in your life. They're either going to be a strength or they're going to be a weight. So, anyways,
That's
as I digress, getting into the empower men coaching. Tell me some of these success stories that you have heard about with guys, and then also I'm curious about what were some of the challenges so far?
I would say the biggest success story is a guy who uh, very similar to me. He was just going out all the time, just seeking he didn't realize he was seeking validation. He was just living up to this archetype of guys, because he knew a bunch of guys who they bragged about how much they got women, how successful they were with women. Coincidentally, or I should say ironically, he never saw them with any women. It was just he's going off of the stories like, oh, we go out and we pick up women every weekend. So he was going out with them, and he was again trying to talk to women and just wasn't getting the responses he was looking for, again thinking very transactionally, and he would just get really upset. He'd leave the clubs in a huff. He would often get really drunk and just drown his sorrows in alcohol and kind of make an ass of himself. And when we were talking about this, I said, well, what exactly, what is this anger behind you? What are you really looking for? And again, his answers were just very superficial. Like, I'm just looking for a date. I'm just looking for a woman. Well, what is she going to do? Like, what are you looking for her for? And it really just came down to self gratification, this instant gratification. He didn't even think he wanted a relationship. It was just he needed a woman in his life at that given moment. He didn't care if it didn't work out for the future. So with that, we created a strategy where I told him to just try different social activities to try to ditch these friends that he had. And it later turned out those friends really weren't getting with a lot of girls anyway. They were getting fooled, just getting girls who were seeking validation that would give them some attention but really didn't care for them. So they were just lying to promote this archetype. But he started just he picked up pickleball. He joined a pickleball league. He started doing yoga classes, was meeting great women there. Women were approaching him. And he's been come a long way, and he's dating this girl pretty steadily now. I mean, I don't think things are getting serious, but he just feels happier. His stress levels have gone down. I noticed the anxiety's gone away. He just feels a lot better of himself, and he's very thankful to have had me in his corner.
What are some of the challenges that you have actually come across working with people?
It's really just like the ego. It's breaking men's like their ego of always wanting a certain outcome and feeling that, especially with the entrepreneurs and the successful men, like they feel that they like attraction, love, admiration, it all can be bought. And a lot of them, they tend to feel that, they're just that not that it's deserving to them, but that it's owed to them, that they meet the alpha male archetype. Like, I'm good looking, I'm tall, I make a lot of money and everything. Women should be drawn to me. And it's not, I don't think it's just out of pure selfishness. I think there's a lot of societal factors that play into that, like social media, YouTube artists, channels that I follow. Uh, just it's the fact that they've been taught, again, it's all comes down to transaction. They just have to break that transaction mindset of, well, I am this, now women should give me this. It's almost like they expect it as a present. They expect it as just like compensation for all their hard work. So while I do promote self work, I have to just keep remind guys that, okay, this isn't a transaction. You're doing self work on yourself, and you're going to make transformation, but it doesn't mean that you're going to get a girlfriend as the prize. And I specifically state in my coaching program, while dating someone is a potential outcome of the program, it's not the promised outcome, because at the end of the day, you can't control how a woman's going to respond to you, if she's going to respond to going on a date with you, if she's going to want to go on a second date or a third date. There's no way to control how she feels. We have no idea what's going on in her personal life, how many other guys she's talking to. And to be honest, it's none of our business. So that's another reason that's another challenge. Guys get so stressed out trying to step into her mind, step into her shoes. What could she be thinking? What could she be doing? Why is she ignoring me? Why doesn't she want to go out with me again? And they just get all in their heads about it. Women do a lot of weird things for weird reasons. They act based on emotion, not logic. Don't waste time trying to figure women out. Just live your life. That's where the empowerment comes in. It's not by trying to control or try so hard to understand why someone else acts the way they do. It's just knowing what you want, what you're willing to accept, setting boundaries, and saying, like, is this person reciprocating the way I expect? Is this person showing signs of interest to me? And I can help break that down too with them. But once we acknowledge that, we decide, is this person right for me? Is this actually good? I don't care how hot she is. Let's forget about the physical attraction. Is she really going to give me what I'm looking for? Are we compatible in that regard? If not, we move on to other avenues. So it sounds so simple when I explain it like that, but because men really aren't taught to think this way. That's really what the challenge is. I call it, just breaking the male ego.
It's like when I hear about women, or when you said that they're emotional, and you're right, a lot of women, they think more emotionally. They do think that they talk a little bit more obscurely, but a little bit more vague, not as direct as typically guys are. And when I hear that, it's kind of like shutting them out of the conversation. And that's the only thing I kind of worry about, because I think about with my relationships, it's like, if we're not compatible up to that point and we are speaking very differently, it's okay not to chase. But I also hear what you're saying. Like, but it's more about the empowerment of the person, not just to the end result. Because like the way my brain was thinking, and I think in analogies, but I also thinking about like visuals. If I get six figures, I'm over 6 foot. I got a six pack. I should go to the vending machine, and this is the girl that is supposed to come home with me. And when I think about that, I'm like, no, that like now we're taking away other people's choices into this relationship. And like, if we're gonna be like, why can't I actually stay in a relationship? Well, what are you really looking for in a relationship? And now are we not communicating? Well, why would you want to be in that relationship in the first place? And it's kind of breaking down those stigmas, because, like I said, you're gonna get older and then things are not going to work. And but no, I appreciate the way that you are trying to help out individuals, help out men, help out boys. And I think it's even cool if women check it out too, because if they were checking out your perspective, maybe they can also understand what is the breakdown of what guys are coming across. Because if we have one movement, like the red pill, they're like, hey, we can't actually talk about this. And I think it's even called the gray pill at this time, where if they break out of the red pill, then they're actually would never in the red pill, and they were just a fake red pillar, and this whole shame and guilt and stuff that goes involved. And same thing with women that hate men. And if they actually go away from it, and they're like, well, did you ever actually do this, or were you just a like pretty much a facade to this relationship? And helping people break down stigmas, I think it would be huge. But
And also, like, real quick to go off of that, I talk about reframing rejection, like, because we talk in the media, we talk about rejection like it's such a terrible thing. It's actually a really good thing, because it's basically saying, don't waste your time and energy on this person. Doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It just means that we're not compatible. We don't have a common bond. Like I'm just not feeling that energy. So when you embrace both a woman's rejection to you, not rejection as a human being, simply a rejection of a date, when you embrace that and realize the benefits of it, men also become choosier as well. They're willing to reject women. Like in my recent life, I rejected women, not in like a negative, bad way, but just sort of I recognized that she wasn't what I was looking for. The old me would have never ever done it. The old me was like the dog under the table when you're having dinner, waiting for a scrap to fall. Like that was me. I just was taking anything I could get because I felt I wasn't deserving of more, because I really just didn't have that confidence and self-esteem. So reframing rejection, I think, is also really huge and just opens your mind tremendously in your dating life.
Appreciate that. I think that's huge. Can you tell me a little bit more about your book? Um, and go a little bit in depth into it. So give the reason for the readers or the listeners to actually check out your book.
Yeah, I mean it's a short read. Pretty much I use this as the entry, like the entry before someone enrolls, like books a call with me or enrolls in my coaching program. It just lists out 5 strategies to shift your mindset and shift your approach with dating if you're really feeling discouraged. So the first is shifting your mindset, removing limiting beliefs. So stop believing negative things about women, about their hypergamous. They only want guys with money. Stop believing that you have to live up to some archetype of a man. You can be yourself. You can embrace yourself for your flaws and who you really are. The second is what we're talking about, self-awareness, like being clear on what you're looking for. Do you want a girlfriend? Are you just looking for casual hookups? And if so, why? What's the reason behind it? How is it going to fill your life? And again, that's something guys have a hard time doing on their own. So that's why I like to work with them over it. For entrepreneurs, number 3 would be balancing your time, because we all know we have busy schedules. Sometimes we feel like we don't have enough time to get out there and meet women, go out to certain events, and we just feel burnt out with work. We may be getting addicted to dating apps and using that as evidence of our worth on the dating market, which isn't a really good measuring tool. We all know that dating apps come along with a lot of issues. So making time to meet people in person, women, especially women who have a high probability of being compatible with you, making time to meet them in person. Number 4 is improving your communication style and your emotional intelligence. So that goes to understanding the language of women, what they mean when they say certain things to you. If you're having an argument, what she's trying to communicate, not paying so much attention to the words she's saying on the surface, but what the deeper meaning is. And the 5th would be like what we were just talking about, getting comfortable with rejection and embracing it, learning from it, not looking at it as failure, but as an opportunity to learn, and looking at it for what it says about your interaction with her and how you two can be compatible moving forward, rather than just who you are as a human being. So that's just the primer for what we talk about in my coaching. But I do think it really opens up a lot of guys' minds, because like I said, men aren't really trained to think this way. So I think it's a good way to just sort of open their mind. It's sort of a little bit of a test of what the value you would get out of my program, I would say. So I really hope guys can find it helpful.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to ask you is, what were you hoping to get out of this by coming on to this podcast, this episode?
I really want to spread awareness of these feelings that I had when I was younger, that I feel a lot of men do have, but they're afraid to talk about. They're afraid of being judged. They may be afraid of being abandoned. They're afraid their life's going to fall apart and they're going to lose all the people they love if they really become vulnerable and express where they're feeling insecure. Guys who are feeling like less than themselves or not feeling enough because they're having trouble with dating or because they don't have a girlfriend. I When I finally found, I thought I was alone for the longest time, like I talked about during my high school, college years, early 20s. I thought I was literally the only man on this planet that felt this way. And that's why I had the dark suicidal thoughts that I had. That's why I turned to addictions to soothe. And I'm realizing now in my practice, there are so many men that feel this way. So I want them to know they're not alone. And I want them to know that they have someone they can talk to. They have somebody who can coach them through this process, and that it's not a quarter of as challenging and dark as you think it is once you understand the concepts that I teach. So that's the message I'm here. Like, yeah, I'm a coach, but I also want to be a friend, a companion, a trustworthy person to these guys who are struggling the way I was struggling.
And where can they find you again?
Yes, my website is empowermencoaching.com. So just to enunciate, it's the word empowerment without the T at the end, empowermencoaching.com. You could find my ebook on there. I'll send you the link to it. There's a direct link to my ebook. I definitely recommend you looking at those strategies. I have some blog posts on there. There's a link to my YouTube channel. I have some YouTube videos up. And if you find and also I should mention my program. I have my 12-week program is mapped out on my website under the program tab. So I encourage you to read through that. And if you feel like you need more personal guidance, I encourage you to book a one-on-one call with me.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time today, Dan.
Likewise, Will. Thanks for having me on. This is really great.
All right, bye.